The most revealing thing a man can say about love is not how deeply he feels it, but how widely he spreads it. When a man speaks about love in absolutes, saying things like, "I love everyone the same," "I fall in love easily," or "love has no boundaries for me," the language itself becomes psychologically revealing. Absolute statements give the illusion of clarity and certainty, yet in Jungian psychology, they often signal something unresolved beneath the surface. The psyche rarely operates in absolutes. Human emotion is complex, contradictory, and deeply personal. When someone flattens that complexity into grand universal claims, it suggests that the experience being described is more conceptual than lived. From a Jungian perspective, love that is real is shaped by specificity. It emerges through encounter, friction, disappointment, and emotional risk. When a man speaks of love as something uniform and endlessly repeatable, he is often describing an internal idea rather than a genuine relationship. These absolutes function as a defense mechanism. They protect the ego from the vulnerability required to truly see and be seen by one person. Instead of entering the unknown depths of a singular bond, the mind stays safely elevated in ideals. Projection plays a central role here. Jung emphasized that we unconsciously project parts of ourselves onto others, especially in romantic contexts. When a man claims to feel the same love toward many women, what he is often encountering is not the women themselves, but recurring projections of his own inner world. Each woman becomes a screen onto which the same unconscious image is cast. The repetition feels like emotional richness, but psychologically it points to stagnation. Nothing new is being discovered because the same inner content is being replayed again and again. Absolute language also reveals a lack of differentiation. Individuation, one of Jung's core concepts, requires the ability to distinguish between inner fantasy and outer reality, between symbol and person. A man who has not developed this capacity may confuse attraction, admiration, emotional stimulation, and love as identical experiences. By naming them all love, he avoids the difficult task of discrimination. Absolutes simplify what the psyche finds overwhelming, but that simplification comes at the cost of depth. There is also an inflation of the ego hidden in such statements. To say, "I love everyone," subtly places the speaker above the emotional struggle that love entails. It implies emotional mastery without sacrifice. Yet real love humbles. It confronts a man with his limitations, his jealousy, his fear of abandonment, and his dependency. Absolute claims bypass these inner conflicts. They create an image of emotional generosity while concealing emotional avoidance. Jung would argue that this pattern often points to an undeveloped relationship with the unconscious feminine, the anima. When the anima remains unconscious, it seeks expression through endless fascination. The man feels emotionally alive through repeated romantic interest, mistaking intensity for connection. His words reflect this enchantment. They sound poetic, expansive, and sincere, yet they lack grounding. The absoluteness of his language mirrors the unconscious nature of the process driving it. True psychological relatedness narrows perception rather than widening it. As a man becomes more conscious, his language becomes more precise. He stops speaking about love as an abstract force and begins to speak about experience, conflict, presence, and responsibility. The disappearance of absolutes signals the emergence of awareness. What remains is not less love, but a love that is constrained by reality, shaped by choice, and tested by time, existing not as an idea, but as a lived tension between two distinct individuals. When romantic language appears repeatedly in a man's speech, flowing easily toward many women, it often signals not emotional depth, but an undeveloped anima searching endlessly for recognition. In Jungian psychology, The anima represents the inner feminine image within a man's psyche, shaping how he experiences emotion, creativity, intuition, and relationship. When this inner figure is not consciously understood or integrated, it does not remain quiet. It seeks expression in the outer world, and most commonly it does so through romantic fascination. A man in this state does not fall in love with women as distinct individuals. Instead, he becomes enamored with the emotional atmosphere they awaken within him. His words may sound tender, insightful, even soulful, yet they are often repetitions of the same inner dialogue spoken to different faces. Each woman becomes a vessel for the same longing, the same emotional hunger, the same unconscious image. What appears to be emotional generosity is frequently an inability to contain feeling within himself. This repetition is crucial to understand. Genuine love evolves through stages. It deepens, conflicts, stabilizes, and transforms. But anima projection remains static. The emotional high feels new each time, yet psychologically it is identical. The man uses romantic language as a way to maintain contact with his inner emotional life without ever confronting it directly. By speaking love outwardly, he avoids listening inwardly. Jung observed that when the anima remains unconscious, it can possess the personality. In such cases, a man may feel emotionally alive only when he is inspired, admired, or desired. He becomes dependent on the mirror of another's response. His romantic speech becomes frequent because it reassures him of his own emotional existence. Silence would force him to face an inner emptiness that he has not yet learned to hold. This is why the language often lacks specificity. It is poetic but vague, intense but non-committal. The words could be spoken to anyone because they are not truly about the person receiving them. They are expressions of an inner state seeking confirmation. When a man repeatedly expresses love without grounding it in action, responsibility, or sustained presence, the anima is speaking through him, not his conscious will. There is also an avoidance of limitation embedded in this pattern. To choose one woman fully is to allow the anima to be challenged, disappointed, and reshaped by reality. That process is uncomfortable. It requires the man to confront disillusionment, to accept that no outer figure can fully embody his inner ideal. By spreading emotional expression across many women, he preserves the illusion that the ideal still exists somewhere, just not yet found. Repeated romantic language can therefore function as a form of psychological inflation. The man feels profound without being grounded, emotionally rich without being committed, connected without being accountable. Jung would see this as a stage of development rather than a moral flaw. It reflects a psyche that has awakened to feeling but has not yet learned to contain it. As consciousness grows, the need to express emotion everywhere diminishes. The man begins to differentiate between inner image and outer person. His words slow down. They become more careful, more embodied. Love stops being something he declares and starts being something he tolerates, struggles with, and remains present for, even when the initial enchantment fades, even when admiration is replaced by friction, even when fantasy gives way to the ordinary weight of real human connection. When a man claims to love many women, what is often being expressed is not emotional abundance, but a confusion between desire and genuine connection. Desire is immediate, stimulating, and ego-affirming. It awakens sensation, imagination, and anticipation. Love, however, requires endurance. It demands the capacity to remain present when excitement fades and when the other person no longer reflects only what the ego wishes to see. In Jungian psychology, mistaking desire for love is a sign that the ego has not yet learned to distinguish instinct from relationship. Desire originates largely in the unconscious. It is driven by archetypal forces, bodily impulses, and symbolic images that promise wholeness. When a man feels desire toward many women, he may interpret this as proof of emotional depth, but psychologically, it points to an ego that is captivated by stimulation rather than transformed by encounter. Each new attraction feels meaningful because it activates the same unconscious patterns, yet nothing truly changes within him. The ego plays a central role in sustaining this confusion. Desire feeds the ego by reinforcing a sense of vitality, desirability, and possibility. Love, by contrast, often destabilizes the ego. It confronts a man with dependence, limitation, and the reality that another person cannot be controlled or idealized indefinitely. When a man repeatedly labels desire as love, he is unconsciously protecting himself from the ego-threatening aspects of real intimacy. Jung understood that the psyche seeks wholeness, but the ego often seeks pleasure. Desire offers quick access to feeling alive without demanding psychological growth. It thrives on novelty, projection, and imagination. Love requires the withdrawal of projections. It asks the man to see the other person as separate from his inner fantasies. This shift is difficult, and many avoid it by staying in the realm of desire, where multiple emotional connections can exist without depth or responsibility. When desire is mistaken for love, emotional multiplicity becomes possible. The man feels sincere in each moment because the feeling is real, yet it is fleeting. He moves from one emotional experience to another, mistaking intensity for truth. Jung would view this as a stage in development where feeling has awakened but has not yet been disciplined by consciousness. Without that discipline, desire becomes scattered and love remains abstract. There is also a fear of loss hidden beneath this pattern. To love one woman deeply is to risk losing her, to risk being changed by her, and to risk confronting parts of oneself that emerge only in sustained intimacy. Desire avoids this risk. It keeps the psyche in motion, always approaching but never arriving. By loving many, the man never fully belongs to one, and therefore never fully loses himself in another. This confusion is reinforced by language. Words like love are used to validate internal states rather than to describe relational reality. The man believes he is being honest because he feels something strongly, yet feeling alone does not define love. Love is revealed in consistency, in tolerance of frustration, and in the willingness to remain when admiration is replaced by complexity. Desire withdraws when challenged. Love stays and adapts. As individuation progresses, the ego slowly learns to tolerate the discomfort of depth. Desire does not disappear, but it is no longer mistaken for connection. The man begins to recognize that genuine love narrows his focus rather than expanding it. It binds him to reality instead of possibility. Emotional energy that was once scattered across many attractions becomes contained, not because it is suppressed, but because it has found a place where it can endure, where it can be tested, where it can mature beyond sensation into responsibility, beyond impulse into presence, beyond desire into something that reshapes the psyche itself. When emotional multiplicity becomes a pattern in a man's life, it often serves as a psychological defense against true intimacy rather than an expression of emotional freedom. Jungian psychology views defenses not as conscious strategies, but as unconscious adaptations formed to protect the ego from inner conflict. Loving many women simultaneously, or believing oneself capable of doing so, can function as a way to avoid the deep psychic disturbance that arises when intimacy begins to touch unresolved wounds. True intimacy is not gentle at first. It presses against childhood patterns, attachment wounds, fears of abandonment, and unacknowledged dependency. When a man allows himself to grow close to one woman, the unconscious does not remain silent. Old complexes awaken. Feelings of inadequacy, loss of control, jealousy, and fear of being exposed surface. These experiences threaten the ego's stability. Emotional multiplicity offers an escape. By distributing emotional energy across several connections, no single bond becomes intense enough to activate the deeper layers of the psyche. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole through confrontation with the unconscious. This confrontation is rarely comfortable. It requires staying present when inner tension rises instead of fleeing toward distraction. A man who remains emotionally scattered avoids this confrontation. He experiences emotional stimulation without emotional penetration. His relationships remain on the surface, not because he lacks feeling, but because depth would require him to face parts of himself he has not yet integrated. Emotional multiplicity also creates an illusion of control. In a single, deep relationship, the man is no longer in command of the emotional rhythm. He must respond, adapt, and sometimes surrender. In multiple emotional connections, he can regulate closeness by shifting attention. When one bond becomes challenging, another offers relief. This movement prevents emotional dependency, but also prevents emotional growth. What looks like independence is often avoidance. There is a subtle fear beneath this pattern, the fear of being transformed. Intimacy changes people. It dissolves familiar self-images and exposes contradictions within the personality. Jung believed that transformation requires symbolic death, the relinquishing of an old identity. Many men resist this unknowingly. By maintaining several emotional attachments, the ego preserves its existing structure. Nothing has to be sacrificed. Nothing has to be chosen fully. This defense is often reinforced by rationalization. The man may tell himself that he simply has a large heart, that exclusivity is unnatural, or that emotional freedom is a sign of maturity. These explanations protect the ego from recognizing the deeper motive, which is fear of emotional captivity. Yet captivity is not the correct word. What the psyche fears is containment. Being held emotionally by one person means being seen consistently, without escape. Jung would point out that intimacy forces the withdrawal of projections. In early attraction, projections create excitement and idealization. Over time, these projections fall away, revealing the real person. This moment is critical. Emotional multiplicity allows the man to restart the projection cycle repeatedly instead of enduring its collapse. He remains in the realm of beginnings and avoids the psychological work that follows. Avoiding intimacy delays individuation. The man remains divided, externally connected but internally fragmented. His emotional life is busy yet shallow, active yet unintegrated. The psyche continues to circle around itself, repeating patterns without resolution, mistaking movement for progress, stimulation for meaning, and emotional availability for emotional courage. When words begin to replace feeling, language becomes a refuge rather than a bridge. In Jungian psychology, this shift is significant. It often signals that the psyche is avoiding direct emotional experience by intellectualizing or verbalizing it instead. A man who speaks frequently and fluently about love, especially toward many women, may appear emotionally open, yet his ease with words can conceal a deeper disconnection from his own feeling life. Genuine feeling is slow, heavy, and sometimes wordless. It arises from the body and the unconscious, often before the mind can name it. When a man lacks the capacity to remain with this raw emotional material, he may translate it too quickly into language. Words then act as containers that are too small. They give the impression of depth without requiring the vulnerability that true feeling demands. Speaking about love becomes safer than feeling it. Jung warned of the danger of inflation through intellect and language. When emotions are not fully lived, they seek expression in symbolic or verbal form. The man may describe love eloquently, analyze it endlessly, and express it repeatedly, yet remain untouched by its psychological consequences. His relationships feel intense in conversation but shallow in experience. The spoken word becomes a substitute for emotional presence. This pattern often develops when early emotional needs were unmet or overwhelming. The psyche learns that articulation is rewarded, while emotional exposure is risky. Over time, the man becomes skilled at describing feelings without inhabiting them. His language grows rich, but his emotional tolerance remains limited. Instead of sitting with longing, uncertainty, or attachment, he narrates them. The narration creates distance, allowing him to stay in control. Empty language does not mean insincere intention. The man may genuinely believe what he says in the moment. The issue lies not in honesty, but in embodiment. Words are fleeting. Feeling requires endurance. When language replaces feeling, emotional bonds lose weight. Promises sound meaningful but dissolve under pressure. Declarations are made easily because they are not rooted in sustained inner experience. Jung would see this as a split between consciousness and the unconscious. The conscious mind speaks, explains, and reassures, while the unconscious remains unfelt and unresolved. The man becomes fluent in emotional symbols but disconnected from emotional reality. He may speak of love to avoid loneliness, of devotion to avoid dependency, of depth to avoid descent into himself. This substitution also protects against disappointment. Feeling deeply means risking emotional pain. Words can be withdrawn, reinterpreted, or redirected. They offer flexibility where feeling demands commitment. By relying on language, the man keeps emotional escape routes open. If one connection becomes uncomfortable, words can be spoken elsewhere, restoring a sense of connection without confrontation. As psychological maturity develops, this pattern begins to shift. The need to speak diminishes as the capacity to feel increases. Silence becomes tolerable. Presence replaces explanation. Love is no longer described in abundance, but lived in restraint. Words regain meaning because they are no longer compensating for emptiness. They emerge from experience rather than covering for its absence. The man no longer needs to convince himself or others of what he feels, because the feeling itself occupies space within him, steady, demanding, and impossible to bypass through language alone. Real love, from a Jungian perspective, does not expand endlessly. It concentrates. As consciousness develops, emotional energy gathers instead of dispersing. When a man truly begins to love, his attention narrows, his fantasies lose range, and his inner world becomes organized around a single, demanding reality. This narrowing is often misunderstood as loss or restriction, yet psychologically it represents integration. What was once scattered across many images, impulses, and possibilities is brought into relationship with one living person. Fragmentation, by contrast, is marked by emotional widening. The man feels drawn to many women, many emotional stories, many imagined futures. This is not because his heart is full, but because his psyche is divided. Jung understood fragmentation as a lack of inner unity. The personality has not yet formed a center strong enough to contain emotional intensity. As a result, emotional energy spills outward, attaching itself to multiple objects without commitment or continuity. When love is unconscious, it seeks quantity. When love becomes conscious, it seeks depth. A man who remains emotionally fragmented often believes he is open, expansive, and emotionally evolved. In reality, his emotional life lacks gravity. Nothing pulls him fully inward. Nothing requires him to reorganize himself around another person. He remains mobile, emotionally flexible, and internally unchanged. Jung viewed the formation of a center, the self, as essential to psychological maturity. Love plays a crucial role in this process. To love one woman deeply is to allow one relationship to challenge the entire personality. It forces the man to confront contradiction, disappointment, dependence, and limitation. These experiences cannot be distributed across many connections without losing their transformative power. Only sustained focus produces psychological weight. Fragmentation feels safer because it avoids total involvement. When emotional energy is spread thin, no single loss can wound deeply, no single conflict can destabilize the ego. Yet this safety comes at the cost of meaning. The man may feel busy, stimulated, and emotionally engaged, but inwardly unchanged. His experiences accumulate without integrating. Jung would describe this as movement without transformation. Real love slows time. It reduces options. It demands repetition rather than novelty. The same person, the same conflicts, the same patterns appear again and again, forcing awareness to deepen. Fragmented love accelerates time. Each new emotional interest creates a sense of renewal without requiring reflection. The man mistakes motion for growth, variety for richness, and emotional circulation for emotional truth. The narrowing of love is not a moral achievement but a psychological one. It occurs naturally when projections are withdrawn and fantasy gives way to reality. As the anima becomes integrated, the need to search for her image in multiple women diminishes. The man no longer needs constant emotional stimulation to feel alive. His inner feminine becomes a source of meaning rather than a hunger demanding satisfaction. This process often feels uncomfortable. The ego resists narrowing because narrowing requires sacrifice. Many imagined selves must be abandoned. Many possible lives must be relinquished. Jung emphasized that growth always involves loss. Fragmentation avoids loss by keeping everything partially alive. Nothing is chosen fully, so nothing is lost completely. When love narrows, the man becomes more present and less impressive. His emotional life may appear quieter from the outside, but internally it gains density. Each interaction carries more significance because it is no longer interchangeable. The woman before him is no longer one symbol among many, but a unique reality that reflects his strengths and exposes his limits. Through this reflection, the psyche begins to organize itself, not around desire or fantasy, but around relationship, responsibility, and sustained encounter. When a man speaks in absolutes about love, claiming to feel the same for everyone, it often reveals projection rather than true emotional depth. The psyche rarely operates in absolutes. Human emotion is complex, contradictory, and highly personal. Flattening this complexity into grand statements allows the ego to avoid vulnerability, giving the illusion of wisdom while concealing the inner incapacity to sustain real, concentrated love. Repeated romantic language toward many women is another sign of unconscious projection, an undeveloped anima seeking reflection in multiple places. Each woman becomes a screen onto which the same inner longing or fantasy is cast, and what appears to be emotional generosity may in reality be a reflection of inner incompleteness. In this pattern, desire is frequently mistaken for love. Desire excites, stimulates, and confirms the ego, whereas genuine love requires endurance, patience, and tolerance for imperfection. A man caught in desire-driven multiplicity experiences intensity repeatedly, but does not undergo the transformative depth that real connection demands. Emotional multiplicity can also serve as a defense against intimacy. By spreading affection across many women, the psyche avoids the concentrated pressure of true relational encounter, which awakens unresolved complexes, dependency, and vulnerability. Words often replace feeling in such cases, as verbal expression becomes a safe container for emotions too raw or demanding to endure internally. Articulation, repetition, and poetic declaration substitute for lived presence, offering an illusion of emotional engagement while avoiding the psychic work that comes with sustained intimacy. Finally, real love is not expansive in scope, but concentrated. The psyche gathers around one person, narrowing attention, withdrawing projections, and requiring sustained presence. Fragmentation keeps emotional energy scattered and superficial, while focus allows the psyche to integrate, to confront itself through the reality of another, and to develop psychological wholeness, where love ceases to be a scattered abstraction and becomes a lived, transformative experience.